Right now, a rare, highly lethal virus is hitching a ride on a luxury cruise ship. It has the ability to jump directly from person to person. And the truly terrifying part? The people exposed to it aren't on the ship anymore. They've already vanished into the general population.
While one passenger was literally dying of a mysterious respiratory crash, the cruise line made a decision that sounds almost impossible to believe. They let dozens of exposed people walk right off that ship in St. Helena and board international flights. We are watching a global manhunt unfold across 3 continents right now, all triggered by a single oversight on a luxury vacation.
To understand how this happens, we have to look at what's being called the St. Helena leak, a massive 2-week blind spot that totally paralyzed the global response.
Look at the timeline here, April 11th to April 24th. For nearly 2 whole weeks after the first passenger died, this outbreak was logged as natural causes. So the ship just kept sailing. They assumed it was just a tragic, isolated medical event. And that single, totally fatal assumption cost health officials the only real window they had for containment. Because during that exact blind spot, up to 40 passengers disembarked the MV Hondius. They didn't go to quarantine. They went straight to airports. They caught flights to major global hubs like Johannesburg and Amsterdam before anyone even thought to hit the panic button. 40 people scattering across the map, potentially carrying a biological time bomb.
But we have to trace this backward. How exactly does a high-end expedition, a trip literally designed to explore the most pristine, isolated places on Earth, trigger something like this?
It tracks back to the most unlikely ground zero imaginable, a landfill in Ushuaia, Argentina. Right before boarding, a Dutch couple took a local bird-watching tour near the site. And what they breathed in wasn't just dust. They inhaled aerosolized droppings from the long-tailed pygmy rice rat. One completely mundane moment looking at birds, and the nightmare was on board.
And the reason this is a nightmare comes down to the specific pathogen itself. Because this virus, it completely breaks the standard rules of transmission.
Usually, health officials are dealing with standard hantaviruses. Those strictly jump from rodents to humans. It's a dead end. Once a person gets it, the chain stops right there. But the pathogen on this ship is the Andes strain, ANDV. And ANDV can spread directly from human to human. That one tiny biological detail completely rewrites the survival math when you're trapped on a confined vessel.
It creates a perfect storm, what epidemiologists call the disease triangle. You've got an older, more vulnerable demographic of passengers. You have a virus with a staggering 40% fatality rate. And you mix that in the shared enclosed environment of a luxury cruise ship. We're talking buffet dining, packed lecture halls, communal stargazing out on the deck. Those shared spaces turned a single, isolated exposure into a lethal chain reaction.
And the speed at which this chain reaction destroys the body is truly the most alarming part.
A patient goes from feeling what seems like a mild, everyday flu to absolute freefall. The virus aggressively attacks the endothelial cells lining the lungs, causing massive vascular leakage. The lungs literally just fill with fluid. Case number 2 felt completely fine, healthy enough to casually board her connecting flight in St. Helena. But she deteriorated so violently midair that she passed away shortly after the plane landed in South Africa. It goes from a mild headache to total organ failure in a blink.
I really want to pause and let the gravity of that settle for a second. We are highly likely looking at a scenario where this virus was airborne inside the sealed cabin of a commercial airliner. We are no longer just talking about a cruise ship in the ocean. We are talking about a woman experiencing massive respiratory failure mid-flight, potentially exposing a cabin full of travelers and the flight crew to a pathogen that kills 4 out of every 10 people it infects.
Which brings us to the immediate fallout. Because this crisis isn't an ocean away anymore. It's already here in our backyard.
Look at how close to home this has gotten. Right now, state health departments across America are actively tracking down people who casually walked off that ship. Georgia, Texas, Arizona, Virginia, California. Officials are actively monitoring residents who shared the air with patient 0. And yes, currently, they are asymptomatic, but they are living their normal lives in our communities while harboring a massive biological question mark. The reason this is so incredibly tense is because we are trapped in a grueling 42-day viral incubation window. NDV moves incredibly slowly in the shadows before it strikes fast. Because of that massive delay, the odds are high that we will see a confirmed domestic case emerge from this group. And when that happens, the regulatory hammer is going to drop. Expect U.S. testing mandates to be aggressively upgraded for expedition vessels in endemic zones, and get ready for severely extended self-isolation rules if you're taking an international cruise.
There's a quote floating around the response teams right now that hits hard. "We thought the ocean was a barrier, but the MV Hondius turned it into a highway for a virus that doesn't need rodents to find its next victim." That perfectly captures the profound systemic failure here. We built all our maritime containment strategies for the threats of yesterday. We completely underestimated how a single missed medical diagnosis could turn an isolated ship into a global viral distributor. And this forces a really uncomfortable reckoning about the future of travel itself. This entire event is a stark wake-up call. The luxury of modern global travel is now permanently tethered to the ecological health of a random landfill in Argentina. The harsh reality is we can no longer pay to explore the world's most isolated, pristine places without accepting the very real risk that we might drag their deadliest secrets back home with us. The barrier between untouched nature and major metropolitan cities is entirely gone. So that leaves the industry, and all of us, with a critical choice before the next outbreak hits. Should cruise lines be legally required to halt all disembarkations the exact moment any passenger dies of an unknown respiratory illness? Or does locking everyone down, before we even know what pathogen we're actually dealing with, create a floating prison scenario that violates the basic rights of healthy travelers?
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, so why not invest in this channel? Click like and subscribe for more.